and welcome to Square's one and only radio station. I'm your host. Today is Saturday, April 3rd, 2004, and we are in Prescott, Arizona with a high of 52 and a low of 39. There will be light rain today. I'm not going to waste your time today. I got another request from the restaurant owner and the continuation of Paradise Lost to get to. Let's get to the show. We have talked about brood parasitism on the show before, but today's type of parasitism is something that might have even happened to you. Have you ever had an order of fries only for a friend or family member or partner to steal some? That is an example of kleptoparasitism. Kleptoparasites are animals that obtain resources, most commonly food, by stealing it from another animal. This is a common practice in insects, birds, and mammals. When I talked about brood parasites, I mentioned cuckoo bees as an example of something that looks like brood parasitism, but is actually kleptoparasitism. These bees lay their eggs in the nest cells of a pollen-collecting species hive. When the eggs hatch, the larvae eat the pollen that the host species has gathered. Of course, bees aren't the only kleptoparasites among insects. Some flies are also kleptoparasites. The Millichiidae is a family of flies that is also referred to as freeloader flies. These freeloaders are known to scavenge spider webs for stink bugs or to wait by the foraging trails of ants to snatch food away. Moving on to birds. Gulls are pretty famous for stealing food from humans. These birds are mostly opportunistic kleptoparasites, meaning they don't rely on these stolen goods. It's just easy to steal sometimes. For a bird that relies more heavily on stealing, you can look to skuas. These seabirds steal the catches of gulls, terns, and other seabirds, making up to 95% of their diet in the winter. For mammals, let's talk about lions and spotted hyenas. When these two share a geographical location, they are in direct competition for food due to their similar diets. But hunting is hard and consumes a lot of energy. If you got a neighbor who already did all the hard work, why not just take it for yourself? That's exactly what lions will do. They follow the calls of hyenas feeding, and most of the time when confronted by a lion, the hyenas will leave or wait a distance for the lion to finish. Moving on from those two, let's talk about two more kleptoparasites, because judging from the sheer number of requests for the supernatural, there's no way the twins of the bakery would let me get away with skipping over this group of creatures. The skunk ape is a Florida native that is known to steal food from human food stores or even follow fishermen to steal their catches. Now over in Japan, the kowai is a spirit-like yokai that will attack food stalls to get their meals, though these hungry guys will also eat trash and roadkill. These are just a small number of the kleptoparasites that exist out in the world. Thank you to the restaurant owner for this interesting request, but let's get back to Paradise Lost. Satan sat upon his new throne of gold, gems, and pearls, looking pridefully at his new palace, still refusing to learn the lesson God was trying to teach him, while the assembly gathered before him. Powers and dominions, no pit, no matter how deep, could ever hope to hold immortal beings like us forever. We may be fallen and oppressed, but we aren't done yet. We will rise again, more glorious and terrifying, and we will not need to fear falling ever again. Whether we do this through open war or by covert methods is what we need to decide. If you have an opinion, you may speak your mind. Moloch stood to speak. He was the strongest and fiercest spirit that fought in heaven, and now in his despair, he no longer feared God, hell, or worse. I vote for open war. I don't have cunning, so let the schemers scheme, but not now. While they scheme, the rest, the millions that stand in arms, would be left waiting for a signal while lingering as heaven's fugitives in this dark, burning prison of shame, all while the tyrant continues to rule heaven because they are stuck waiting. No. Let us go armed with hellfire and fury to attack the towers of heaven all at once. We can use the flames that were meant to torture us against our torturer. He shall hear our infernal thunder as we rain black fire on his angels, burning him with the torments he invented. Perhaps you think this will be too difficult, but remember, we are meant to be up there, not down here. Remember how painful it was to fall? The ascent will be easier. Why should we even fear the outcome? What can be worse than to dwell here, condemned to utter woe as fire burns at us with no end? What do we have to fear? His anger? Even if we do not succeed, we will have our revenge. He ended his speech, scowling, desperate for revenge and rearing for battle. On the other side of the assembly, Belial stood with far more grace. He had an air of composed dignity, but it was false, a shell of what once was. But he still had a talent for speaking. I would like open war, my friends, and trust me, a lack of hate is not what dissuades me from pursuing this. What makes me hesitate is the uncertainty of our success. When the chief of arms can only think of his want of revenge? How, when the towers of heaven are so heavily guarded? We could launch a surprise attack or an all out attack. Either way, our enemy would still sit untouched on his throne and would simply expel us, crushing those last remnants of hope. You say this can't get any worse, but we don't know that. We should just endure this punishment. Maybe he will let us back into heaven after his anger subsides. Mammon stood to counter this hollow argument. What good is it to be back in heaven with him still sitting on the throne? We would just be under his rule again, the very thing we rebelled against. An eternity of worshipping someone we hate? We can make something better down here. We have gold and gems. We can get used to the flames. I advise against any war at all. Instead, let's build our empire here. Murmurs of agreement fell over the assembly. They liked the idea of peace, where they wouldn't have to face the Almighty's thunder, or even just Michael's sword. Beelzebub stood, nervously glancing to Satan as the assembly quieted down once again. Thrones and imperial powers, offspring of heaven, ethereal virtues, or are these titles we must now renounce? Should we call ourselves princes of hell instead? After all, it seems like the majority says we should just stay here and build our empire. This is a dungeon, not our safe retreat. We are imprisoned here, remember? And you want us to sit around projecting peace? No. We can't just jump to war either. We have already lost that battle. What we need is a different plan. We need something easier to attack than heaven. There is such a place. Another world. The home of a new race called man, created like us, not as powerful, but more favored by the Almighty. Let's learn more about these creatures, and maybe we can find a weakness we can use to attack them. After all, destroying his new creation or tempting them to our side, that would be some revenge. Stealing his joy away. Should we attempt this? Or sit in this darkness, playing Empire? Beelzebub gave his plea, but it wasn't actually his idea. It was Satan's plan, and he got the assembly on board. Now he just needed to seal the deal. Well, it seems we have decided. We can close that debate. This plan will surely bring us closer to retaking heaven. But first, who should we send to scout out this new world? Who shall attempt to escape this dark abyss? It would be dangerous, for they would have to avoid whoever guards this prison. Whoever we send will have to be strong enough to carry our last remnants of hope. Beelzebub waited for someone to come forward and volunteer, but the entire assembly was mute as they considered the danger of attempting something like this alone. To everyone's dismay, none of the champions gathered here stepped forward. At last, Satan spoke up. "Oh, progeny of heaven, I understand the hesitation. After all, the journey out of hell will be a difficult one. We are surrounded by layers of fire and barred gates. Even if you get past that, you must cross a chasm of darkness and chaos. And when you get out of hell, who knows what dangers await in this new world." As your ruler, I will be the one to take on these dangers. After all, I would never abandon you like he abandoned us. While I am gone, I look to you to make this prison more tolerable, though I will find a way to free us." Satan rose from his throne, and no one dared to speak against him. Instead, they all bowed down. After the assembly dissolved, the adversary of God and man, Satan, swiftly flew towards the gates of hell. He scoured the land to the right, to the left, looking for the gate. He swooped low to examine the ground before beginning the climb upwards. The ceiling was as high as the Indian Ocean was wide. When he finally reached the roof, he found 9 gates before him. 3 were brass, 3 were iron, and 3 were adamantine, and all were wreathed in flames. 2 guards sat, one on each side of the gate. One was a fair and beautiful woman, well, only from the waist up. Below her waist was a mass of vicious dog heads that barked and snarled and snapped. The other guard was barely even a shape at all, more like a shadow given substance, wearing what could be a crown on what could be a head. When Satan landed before the gates, the shadow stood from his seat and strode towards Satan, hell trembling with each step. But Satan stood undaunted. He even looked at the ghastly shadow with a look of disdain. "Who are you to block my way? You're definitely appalling to look at. Move out of the way, or you will learn why a hellborn like you shouldn't mess with a heavenborn like me. Aren't you the traitorous angel, the one who was the first to break the peace of heaven? The one who raised a rebellious army only to be cast out by God and condemned to eternity of wasting away here in woe and pain? And you think you can tell me what to do? I reign as king here. Go back to your punishment and do it quickly, or you will taste my whip of scorpions, and trust me, it stings much worse than that fire does." The grisly terror grew larger and more terrifying as he spoke, but Satan stood unimpressed. In fact, this was making him mad. His long hair began bristling like a comet's tail. The guards glanced at each other with concern as they realized the one before them was one of the greatest foes they had ever faced. They were clearly outmatched. The woman stood and rushed in between the two. "Father, what are you planning to do to your only grandson?" "Son, what possesses you to threaten your grandfather like that? Don't you know that while you threaten to destroy each other, he sits above us, laughing?" "What a strange outburst. Why do you call me your father and this phantasm my grandson? I have never seen you before, and I truly have never seen 2 more detestable beings as you two." "Have you truly forgotten? Am I truly that foul in your eyes? You were at an assembly in heaven when you began your revolt. You were struck, and in your surprise you fell and cracked your head open on the ground. I sprang forth from that wound. All the host of heaven were amazed and frightened. They called me sin. And when you were cast into hell, I was given the key to these gates and told to guard them. While I was here, I gave birth to your grandson, Death, but things aren't supposed to be born here. I was transformed by the birth, and Death came out as a shadow. So please, don't fight. My daughter, I am sorry I didn't recognize you. I am not your enemy. I came to set him and you and all the angels who fell with me free from this dark and dismal house of pain. To do this, I need to scout the new world myself. Once I find the information I need, I can bring both of you to a place where you can be at ease without the smell of sulfur, and you will have all the food you could ever want. Both seemed excited by this idea. Death gave a ghastly grin at just the idea of no longer being haunted by his hunger. Sin took the key from her side and approached the gates on her roiling mass of beasts. She summoned the keyhole before her. Satan was lucky she was the one to get the key, and that she was the only one, as she was the only one in all of hell with the ability to open these gates. After she turned the key in the lock, every bolt and bar holding the gates closed unfastened, and they opened with a horrendous cacophony of creaks and groans. Sen did have the power to open the gates, but not to close the gates. So now the gates sat wide open, like a furnace mouth, spitting smoke and fire. Beyond the gate, they could now see was a dark, limitless ocean without dimension, where length and width and height and time and place were lost, a place of night and chaos. Satan flew forward into this place, only to find himself being buffeted by winds. Waves crashed into him as smoke filled his face, and he found himself falling, all while he was being deafened by the layers upon layers of voices and noise that filled the realm. There was no stopping to get his bearing, so he just kept going. He flew when he could, swam or walked or waited when he had to, and crawled when he could do nothing else. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he arrived at the place that would eventually be called Earth. That's where we will leave that story today. He's made it to Earth. I can't wait to see what he does next in his quest for revenge, but we will hear more about that next time. Until then, you'll hear from me again yesterday, today, tomorrow, and the rest of your lives. Goodbye!